Yeah.
So welcome everyone. As we said, we're in week 9 of this semester, which is surreal on so many levels, and we have so many challenges and so many things facing all of us. But the good thing is that in our professional development series, which is every Wednesday at noon, same bad time, same bad channel, same Zoom link, all those kinds of things, our topic today is basically resilience and how it is that we can get through all of these kinds of things, keep doing the stuff we're doing, help our students do the stuff we're doing, promoting their own success, maybe even some self-care on our side. And I am so excited that Julie Pentz, who is a professor of dance, is here to share her ideas on this. And there might even be some rhinos involved, which I am ultra excited about. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Julie, who's going to talk to us about resilience today.
Thank you, Dawn. Okay, let me go ahead. I'm going to share a screen here. Um, so I hope everyone can see this. Is that seen by everyone? Yes, Dawn, can you see that? Great. Okay. Dawn, and to the entire Office of Teaching and Learning, thank you for inviting me. I have utilized a lot of things with teaching and learning, and so when Dawn asked me if I could present on this topic, I was very excited because, as he's mentioned, the R word, rhinos, that is going to come up. It's really important. But so I wanted to just talk about how life is hard and you can do hard things. I did not make that up. I read this from, the book Glennon Doyle. I think it's called Untamed. And it really stuck with me because I think that we can all agree that life has been really hard. You could also say that life is always hard. As a dancer growing up, I've always been told, suck it up, life is hard, figure it out. And that has come in handy. So I did want to talk about, what we can do. And when I say we, I want to say this is not just for faculty. This is also for staff, and this is for students, because we're all equals in this and making this work. And, as Dawn mentioned, it's week 9 and we haven't shut down here at K-State. And I believe that a lot of people expected that to happen week 3 or week 4. And I think it's safe to say we're going to see it through. So in addition to being a professor of dance, I did just really want to quickly share. I'm also a parent of very young children, and that's important to note, especially here in Manhattan, which has our kids either virtual or hybrid, and that has been extremely difficult. I am also very community engaged, and my research is reliant on community engagement, both in the schools and the retirement communities. And as you can imagine, all of that was brought to a halt. I'm also serving on the National Board of Dance Educators, and then I'm also a Global Goodwill Ambassador. And I wanted to note that, not to tell you what all I do, but to say that we're all like that. All of us have that list of things that we do. And again, I'll say we're equal. And everything that I just said doesn't really matter because we're all facing, I think for once in our entire lives, everyone in the world is facing the same hard time, right? I wanted to start with talking about my teaching philosophy, and I actually got this from, I believe it was last year's teaching and learning weekend. Forgive me, Dawn, I don't remember, there's so many seminars, but it was that
It's our
weekend.
FEET weekend, our Faculty Exchange for Teaching Excellence.
That one, and that was before everything was locked down. It was like one of the last weekends.
It was.
I took a session, and it had charged us to find our 3 to 5 words. And these are my 3 to 5 words: engaged, interdisciplinary, community-based service learning. And this is exactly who I am. And so that takes me to our yeses, right? Because with us all being so challenged, right? Homeschooling our children, if you choose to teach classes online, that's a challenge. If you choose to teach classes in person, it's even more different. And I'll speak as a dancer. I have to clean my space. I mean, clean my space, right? And I am only allowed to teach my class for 60 minutes when it's supposed to be an hour and 15. And so we're faced with all of these challenges. So then someone asks you to do something, right? How do you know? Say yes. And so this is my first piece of advice, is that you have to figure out when to say yes and when to say no. And so when I am asked something, I have to go back to, oh, I just gave it away. Shoot. I have to go back to who I am. So does what I'm being asked, does it fit into any of this? Is it engaged in some way? Is it interdisciplinary? Is it community-based service learning, right? And so then it makes it really easy. And I'll, what, I'll just, because I'm real, I'll use an example. I got asked to serve on a committee once. I won't say what, but it didn't fit into any of this. And I didn't want to just be a body, right? And I recognize that that's difficult depending on where you're at in academia. I am promoted, but I still am expected to serve. But because I know who I am, I have that guide to know when to say yes. So a couple of things that pop in my head when I'm asked, does this serve students? And if it does, then the answer is yes. Does it help others? It doesn't even have to be students. Does it help my community? And does it make a difference? Am I going to make a difference in someone's life? And if the answer is yes, then I say yes. And if it doesn't, then I say no. So that's the thing that I would charge everyone. And again, this is not just faculty. This is not just staff. It's everyone. It's students. You're allowed to say no. And no isn't a negative. No is just, I'm sorry, not at this time. So Don, when he asked me, this had come up, my Rhino philosophy, and anyone who knows me knows that I love rhinos. And I can tell you that I have a rhino on me at all times. Often it's more than one rhino. And although I think the creatures are fascinating, it was really this book, The Rhinoceros Success book, that I read many years ago. I was an assistant professor in the trenches of academia, trudging through, and I won't give the book away, but I highly recommend it to everyone. It's an easy read. You can read it in an afternoon, and it's funny, but it also makes sense. And rhinos charge forward, right? And so also who I am is a rhino. A rhinoceros charges with singleness of purpose. All energy is directed towards the attainment of one burning desire. The reason you are so dangerous, in a nonviolent way, of course, is that once you set yourself charging at something, nothing can distract you. Never spread yourself thin. I don't want to see that last part. Never spread yourself thin. Whatever you want to do, and it doesn't matter what it is, and it also doesn't matter what anyone thinks, right? I think about my research project that I do with Tap 2 Togetherness, and when I started that, people just assumed it was dance class. It's not dance class. It's bringing people together, and it's making a difference. But it took a long time for people to really look at it as valid. But I was a rhino, and every no that I got for grants, for submitting articles, I took the no, but I kept moving forward. I was a rhino. And so the reason I surround myself with rhinos is to remind myself, because in these hard times, we can forget, and I'll use spring of 2020 as an example. Um, we get shut down, we're all at home, and I mean, I just got lost. I mean, and I'm sure that a lot of people can relate. And you have to have something in your life that reminds you, right? It doesn't have to be a Rhino. It needs to be what's important to you. I've heard of people really liking to have lighthouses in their space and in their life, because a lighthouse guides you towards land, right? Keeps you focused. Um, so for me, I'm a Rhino, and I'm really proud of it. And um, so beyond that, I've taken it into the classroom, because when we're talking about helping students, the only way that you can truly be there for students is if you first know yourself and then you give yourself to your students. Um, and so in all of my classes, my dance classes in particular, I have a Rhino Student Award. And this isn't something they're required to do, but I will have students first read the book, and then if they really like the book, then they will decide if they want to pursue this Rhino Award. And what it is throughout the semester, they find a way to document their Rhino behavior. And that's all I say. I've had students do video diaries. I use this example right here because it was so creative. I'm a fan of paper and books, and this student, she had this big, thick notebook. She cut out all of these rhinos and pasted them in there. You can see like she has just a schedule of things that she did that day. Even there, like in the Rhino, it looks like she did, maybe that week, she did 86,000 steps, so it was just a constant way for her to keep Rhino energy moving forward. And I wish I could show you. I mean, this book had over 100 pages, probably hundreds. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of art, but it set her on the path to figure out what she really wanted to do. Ultimately, she left school. She never finished. But and that was really hard for me, as she sat in Radina's with me and broke the news to me, and I almost cried, because she was nearly done too, but she was going into the arts field. She's like, nope, now's the time, I'm ready, we're gonna go. And I have to take responsibility for that. She did win the Rhino Student Award. All of the students who enter the challenge have to present at the very end of the semester, and the winner receives a Rhino that is adopted in their name from a zoo of their choice. So this student chose the San Diego Zoo, and so I adopted a Rhino in her name, and she got all kinds of stuff, and it was really fun. So that's my way of taking myself and putting it into my class. I of course wish all of my students would do that, but this idea, and I am also not for everyone. But again, it's about being authentic with your students. And I wanted to talk about that today because we're facing extremely challenging times. So you have to be yourself. You have to let your students see you for who you are. And I can tell you that, like, it's some point, going back to those yeses and nos, you got to let stuff go, right? You've got to let go of what you believe is professional in the classroom. Like, I'm teaching all of my classes in person, and I did that because I knew my students wanted to be in class. And then I have students telling me, you're my only class in person. And then we struggle because we're wearing masks. And I can tell you, teaching dance class in a mask is extremely difficult. And so, you have to let go of what used to be, and I definitely found myself in the beginning saying, I'm not going to do this, ready to just throw in the towel. But then, it's week 9, and I can tell you it took me until last week, so week 8. I want to use an example with my jazz class. It's an advanced jazz class. We have many restrictions. We're not supposed to be on the floor. We have to wear masks. Trying to stretch your tight hamstrings while not laying on the floor is really difficult. And then we have these boxes. And I don't know I know everyone's 6-foot distancing. I don't know if anyone else's classrooms have like tape on the floors, but in our space we do. And we're also 12-foot distancing. And so the studio that I'm teaching in, which I love, it's this beautiful, bright studio with windows, with, nice wood floor. I always have had good energy in there until this semester. And I love my students. It's a really small class because we're not allowed to have large classes. And I've been pushing through, being really real. But if I'm going to tell the truth, it was a struggle to go to class. And it was week 7, and probably before, but I finally said it out loud week 7. I said, I feel like I'm in jail. I can't even walk around the space the way they have it taped out. I feel so constricted. And so then we're in week 8, and we're doing this combination in jazz class. And I'm teaching the dancers about trying to be connected and extend your bodies, except they're not supposed to like reach out of their boxes. And if you step into the other box, you're not supposed to enter the space. There's just so much to think about, and it's so much. And so I remember standing in the corner, and I was watching them reach, and they reach up and they reach out and they reach side. And as I was watching them, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're trying to escape those boxes. They don't want to be in those boxes. I mean, it hit me. And if you ask any of my students, because I stopped the music when they were finished and I was just looking at them and I was just like, you have no idea what you just did. And immediately everything changed for me for that class. I finally felt like we were actually living truly. We weren't trying to stay in the boxes. We stay in the boxes because that's the rules. But we were trying to escape the boxes. And so all of these restrictions, I finally found my positive. My hard thing became a positive thing. And so I would really challenge everyone to see if they can find some of that, because I know for me, I have felt so much better since. And I hope my students do. We've talked about it, but I don't want to talk too much. I want to dance. So I think it's just really important that you take some time to think about that, which brings me back to you as a person, right? Faculty, staff, students. You can't do anything if you're pouring from an empty cup. This came across, I don't know, from somewhere. I found it somewhere just by chance. And, you can't pour from an empty cup if you don't take care of yourself first, right? And however you take care of yourself, it doesn't matter. For me, I do a little bit of journaling, but I do reading. I surround myself with rhinos. I also, drive my kids to swim and sit in my car for 3 hours, and it gives me time to think and reflect. But you have to put yourself first, right? And I'll say, if you have any students on here, students, it's the same thing. If you don't take care of yourself, then you can't give your best to your education. So, just think about how you can, take care of yourself now more than ever. I mentioned rhinos in my life. This other illustration, it's a rhino thing you wouldn't understand, is actually a journal that a student found for me and gave to me. I don't know where they found it, but found it and thought of me. And I do, I've mentioned I have rhinos. I also have I have to show this rhino. Another student found this in Florida. It's made out of recycled flip-flops, which I think is so cool, right? But another rhino, right? And so, you know, it, I mean, I don't even have a word to say how it feels to me when a student sees a rhino and thinks of me. So that means I've done my job, right? Um, so again, find your thing, whatever that is. And if a rhino is your thing, steal it, right? Or if you need educated on rhinos, do it. The rhino up in Kansas City Zoo's name's Ricky. And if you yell out Ricky, he'll come over. Don't ask me how I know it, but I do, right? But back to what we're, talking about today. Life is hard, and you can do hard things, but it's also important to note that hard is not a negative thing, right? Hard is just hard. So don't give it power, right? Because we can all do hard things. I'm sure you could sit here and list a ton of hard things that you've done. Hard is just hard, right? So, yeah, any questions? There it is. There I am. There's another picture of me.
So Julie, I have a question that's kind of occurring to me through this, and one of the things that I truly believe is our students can do hard things, um, but I'm also aware they don't often want to do hard things. So how is it that we inspire people to do? Because I think there are two human truths. I should teach this in Gen Psych. People are lazy and they want to feel good. So if you want them to work, you have to make them feel good somehow when they're working. So what are the best ways that we can get our students to lean into the hard stuff? What are the best ways to inspire them to take on that challenge? Because I've had a lot of conversation with students in the last week who are concerned about their grades. And when I'm giving them recommendations, those recommendations typically require work. And you can just see the "I'd rather not" on their face.
Well, and so as a dancer, we are slightly different in that our training is never over. Our students can't take tap 1, 2, and 3 and be, an amazing tapper. Maybe they will be, but in the dance field, you have to take class over and over and over again. And so, at least with my dance students, that conversation happens very quickly. And then, honestly, I think for me and here's where I lean on my rhinos. If a student, honestly, if a student truly doesn't want to do work, you can't force them to. I mean, it's just like a kid, right? I'm thinking about parenting. You can't force a kid to eat. You can't, right? But what you can do is lead by example. Of course, we can talk about designing assignments to help with that. What comes to mind is my K-State First DAS 100 class. So I get freshmen first semester. And this semester, more than a lot of them, I'm their only in-person class. They didn't come to college to take class in their dorm room. And so I know that, but it is a reality. And so with that class, we've been moving really slow because it's all about building community. And so what I've done with designing my assignments, I split one big assignment into 4 to help them, so rather than say, you're going to do this big assignment, it's the class I teach is a DAS 100 class on K-State culture. And so we are doing a big assignment. They get to choose one aspect of K-State and they have to thoroughly research it. And of course, the big ones, are always taken first. And there's only one, no topic can be repeated. So, of course, football, right? Things like that. But then they choose, unique buildings. I had one student in the past, and this kind of blew my mind, the financials of Kansas State University. And I said, do you really want to do that? He was like, yeah, I'm a business student. His presentation, the stuff that he dug up, I was in awe, with public records. But so with this assignment this semester, I've split it into 4. So they always have something that they're working on. And that, so far, everyone's been doing pretty well. So I think, Don, in terms of motivating your students to do hard things, sometimes you got to pull back. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I mean, the first couple weeks, every class was like, okay, I'll see you next class, maybe. you know, maybe I'll see you. I don't, and then, I don't even say the word anymore, but the cue, right? And I think us as faculty know this very well. I mean, every other day you get someone thrown into quarantine, and then you've got to figure it out for them. It does seem, at least on my end, it seems like it's calmed down a little bit, but again, like, you have all of these extra factors. So, back to my side about just let go of what you expected, and just keep pushing forward. If you know yourself, then you're going to do good for your students.
And I love that perspective. I love it. It's much more kind of universal perspective. It's not tied into the assignment of the curriculum as well. It's really adjusting to where they are. I love that. There's a couple questions in the chat I want to kind of bring up. So
Okay.
first of all, people are telling how you really spoke to them today, and they're appreciative of that. Someone else asked, when did you find rhinos, or when did the rhinos find you?
Gosh, it was, I was an assistant professor here. I think I was in the 10-year tunnel, which should have made me feel good, but it didn't. So that was around 2008, 2009. And it was then a gradual thing, right? So I had the book. I loved the book. I read it 3 times in a row, like in a weekend. And then I bought a second book and I put it on my desk. And so when students would come in, they'd say, "What is this book?" And then that opened it up. And then students started finding rhinos for me. I I can say that, our family, we like to go to zoos. And so every time I went to a zoo, I bought a stuffed rhino. It was a pretty intense moment during lockdown in the spring, because my kids and I decided, Mom, we need to go save your rhinos in your office, because there are dozens of them in the office. So we did. We were able to get in before we got shut out again, and all the rhinos came home. So it's been a gradual thing, but it's been a constant thing, and it's just normal for me now. But again, they're a symbol and a reminder, because I don't think about rhinos all day, every day, but they're always around me to remind me, if I want to just throw up my hands and say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
That is awesome, and I'm glad you rescued your rhinos. That is
Oh,
important. So my kind of spirit animal is Batman, and I had to rescue him from my office to take home too. So
yeah.
that was interesting too. Someone else asked if you could redisplay the slide where you say yes or no.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask if you have any advice for especially those who are not full professors, for how it is that they can get away with saying no when these opportunities present themselves.
That's a hard one. Well, first, I am going to tell you that I am a fairly new full professor, in my second year. And if I'm going to be very honest, I still feel very nervous, especially, I'm going to talk directly to faculty with, um, with the financial situation that our university is facing, right? And I'm certain there's a lot of people here, and I'm one of them, who've been furloughed, right? Um, there's no sense in ignoring it. And so then you worry, if I say no, am I going to lose my job, right? Now, if we're talking about tenure, going up for tenure, that's even truer. I would say you have to surround yourself by truly authentic people that you trust, which I've done. And it didn't happen overnight. And it's across college. I have some really great relationships over in the College of Health and Human Sciences. I have a really wonderful individual in the Office of Research who has my back all the time since I was a junior faculty. And while it's important to grow those relationships in your department, especially if you're going up for promotion at any level, those are the individuals going to help see you through, right? Through voting. But you also have to find other people, whether they're in your department or outside of your department or college, that you trust. And then when the time comes, they'll be there for you. And I've been fortunate enough to have that. I've also been fortunate enough to be that person for people, not just faculty, but for students too, right? This is not, we, I, I got to tell the truth. We all breathe the same air. All of us. We're all the same, right? And even though we have these systems, I truly believe that if you are truly authentic and you are truly doing the work that you want to do and you're following the rules, right? If we're talking about promotion, there are things you got to check the boxes, right? Talking about full professor, you have to have national service, international service, you have to publish, you have to have stellar teaching. That's just a checklist, right? So, but you have to use that stuff and use what's most important to you and do it together. And that's what I managed to do. I know that not everyone is fortunate enough to do that, but there has to be a way. So here, right now I'm in the Rhino mind, right? There has to be a way. But I'm not always like this. I also am just like, I'm going to get fired. I'm there. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it because people think it. So let's not live in pretend land. Let's be who we truly are, right? And so if you acknowledge that, then you're gonna be okay. And then I'm gonna say, surround yourself by people who you want to be around, right? Go make new friends. I know we're not supposed to be around people right now, but as someone whose research is based on togetherness, you got to find a way. I mean, I hope I answered that question. I hope, whoever asked that, reach out to me. I'd be happy to go out for coffee and talk to you more, because that fear is real, and it's really difficult. So
That's Delaney's hand.
hi, Delaney.
So I think you did answer the question. You answered it well. One thing I'm gonna kind of add, and this is something that it should have occurred to me, but it didn't early on, is that a lot of times when people are asking you to do things, it's part of the service component of our responsibilities. And as you mentioned, we're expected to serve. However, when we're evaluated for promotion and tenure, it's often the research and teaching that predominate. So I think kind of protecting yourself in particular from those service opportunities is something that I wish maybe I had known earlier in my career. So I'll just say that out loud for anyone who needs to hear that. A very kind of cool idea that was introduced in the chat is someone said they love the quote that you have tiled in the slide. So life is hard and you can do hard things. And wondered if people wanted to share kind of their slogans, their mottos in the chat for how it is that they remain resilient. I offered the one that my students use in my lab, and that's all the things all the time. And that may seem like it's kind of antithetical to some of the things you're saying here, but I think it's just kind of an embracing of the chaos. And one of the other kind of mottos or rules for my lab is chaos is fine, but we don't want drama. And if we're doing a million things and we're keeping track of it and we're doing it right, that's something we kind of go. There's a couple of other suggestions in here for cool resilient mottos. One is, at the end of the day, we can endure much more than we think we can. And another is, my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. That latter quote is from Maya Angelou. I really like that. Someone else says, build success upon failure. And someone else says, live intentionally. So I really love this, and I hope that people in the chat continue to share these. And I was kind of wondering how it is that someone else says, do the next right thing. And that one's great, because there's a lot of next right things right now. So how is it that we prioritize and decide what the next right thing is? And I'm throwing this out there. Julie, obviously you can answer this too. And I wondered if you wouldn't mind kind of going to the whole gallery mode and in the slideshow so we can see more of each other while we have this conversation. But how is it, among all of the next right things, all of the things we could be doing and prioritizing, how do we pick?
I'll go. I'll tell you what. It was Dean Brian Spooner. He was interim dean, if anyone knows Brian Spooner. I was having a hard time, and I landed myself in the dean's office, and it was an impossible situation. I was thankful that he to see me. I didn't want to go see him. No one wants to go see your dean, okay? And he sat down, and you know what he said to me? He said, you know what? I live in a house of women, my wife, and I have 2 daughters. And he said, I don't understand them. He said, but what I have come to understand is they just know things. And he said, you're telling me that you know that this situation isn't right and you know what to do, but you are afraid to do it. He said, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. If you know that it's the right thing for you, then it is the right thing and do it. And it was from that moment on that I started trusting my gut, right? Some people call it intuition. I call it my gut. There have only been 2 or 3 other times where I didn't trust my gut and I got burned. Yeah. And it doesn't matter as long as you know what's right. And so, you know, going back to knowing yourself, that's where it starts. It starts with you. And then it really is going to be okay. So thank you, Brian Spooner, for that.
That's excellent. We can talk about positive contact with our deans and our administrators.
Yeah.
So that is excellent. Does anyone else have any advice about how it is you prioritize all of these next things you could be doing, and how it is that you decide to take on the hard things versus the easy things? Because I know myself, when I look at my to-do list, there are some things that are going to take a lot of effort and a lot of thinking, and there's some other things that just aren't. And sometimes I do the easy things rather than the hard things because they're easy, and then later I regret not having taken on the hard thing. And people can give thoughts in the chat, or they can just chime in. Unlike yesterday's KS Unite events, we're hoping not to get Zoom bombers today. You know, this is, and if you're at some of those, that was awful. But we've got a very broad collection of experiences here, and I would love to hear some of them.
I like to share with my students some of the psychological science that tells us that if you do the hard things first, the easier things serve as a reward. And you're done. It's a reward to get done with the hard things. Then you've just got the easier things to do, or the things that you really want to do. Like if there's something that you're avoiding and it's difficult, try to do that thing first. I can't remember. I think it's called Premax Principle. I may or may not be misremembering that principle, but I always try to share that. It's because I teach psychology, so sharing that with my psychology students, like, oh, so this is a way that psychology can help me. But it's really like knowing that and doing it are 2 different things. I'm not exactly sure how to get them to do the hard thing first, but at least I can leave them with that knowledge.
I love the visual this creates, but someone in the chat just said you should eat the biggest frog first. And I think that's great. So what other advice do people have for this? I'm seeing that someone said, my dad always says you can't steer a stopped car, so just pick a thing to make me move, and then I can switch directions later. So what are other ways that we kind of do this? Because, you know, I'm the kind of person, I write my to-do lists. I have 100 to-do lists. And the first thing I cross off the to-do list is make to-do list. And I feel a lot of satisfaction having crossed that first thing off. When I was in grad school, the first thing on my to-do list was wake up. You know, and I would cross that one off and I'd feel like I had done something. So the issue though with that is that I like to cross things off. The hard things are hard to cross off.
Hi, do you mind if I chime in really quick?
Absolutely, please.
Because this is something that I've been working with a lot. My name is Anthony. Nice to meet you. I'm in Julie's dance class. And one thing that I've been doing recently is focusing more on my joy, you know, like things that make me feel fulfilled at the end of the day. Because it kind of makes everything, I don't know, it puts less pressure on the hard things. You know, and if there's less pressure, then you're more likely to do them, you know? And especially right now, like we're just trying to take it easy on ourselves as much as we can, you know, because you got to do what you got to do. But one thing that I like to do is I make my to-do, but at the top of my to-do list, I put my priorities, which is normally like basic things like drink water, dance, go for a walk, do something out of my comfort zone, and do something kind. Because like at the end of the day, if I do those things, I will feel like I've done what I need to do. You know what I mean? Because like at the end of the day, like school is necessary, you know, sometimes. And like all of the hard things that we have to do are good for our future, but we have to focus a lot on like now, you know? But yeah, that's just a little thing that I do that I can like go at the end of the day. And when I check it off and I do those things, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I'm okay. But yeah, that's all.
What I love about your list is if you did those things on the top of your list, you feel fulfilled. Those are things that automatically are going to make yourself feel better at all levels, not just academically,
Mm-hmm.
but socially, emotionally, psychologically, all of those things. So I love that perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Someone else asked in particular, I think this is a great question, is how do we motivate on the low days? Those days when you just kind of have low energy and you're not kind of feeling it. How do we get those things crossed off the list, be they easy or hard, on those low days?
So I'll chime in here. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess.
Absolutely.
So Anthony, I absolutely loved that response. My response here is going to be a little bit less enjoyable than that. But for me, on my low days when I just cannot get motivated, especially to do the big hard tasks, I break them into really small tasks and write them into maybe 5 different lines on my to-do list. For instance, if I need to review a manuscript or something, I'll write down, read through the entire manuscript. And once I do that, I check that off. And then I'll write down, build your comments table. Once I do that, I'll check that off. And so you can just check off a lot more options. So that's one thing that I do.
And there's someone else in the chat who actually has a reference for doing that. A book by B.J. Fogg about tiny habits, the small changes that change everything. And what I really like about both of you doing that is I like to, like as I said, I like to cross those things off the list, have more things to cross off. I feel more satisfied in doing it. I think one of the things too for me that was really hard is if I didn't have time to do the whole task, I wouldn't start the task. And I think for small things, that's a problem, but for big things, writing the manuscript, writing the grant, if you don't have the 5-hour block you think you need, which I never have, then you never do the thing. So I really like that idea. I think it's really good practical advice. Thank you. Any other thoughts on how it is that we get ourselves motivated on those low days? Because on some of those low days, I don't even want to write that list.
I'll chime in. I think that one, giving ourselves permission to like just take some time. That's something that I've been doing this semester when I'm feeling just like really low. I'm like, you know what? Today I'm gonna like take my morning slow if I have that opportunity, or like find some spot in my day where I can just like, I'm gonna take, even if it's only 15 minutes, just like I'm gonna take 15 minutes and I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna get myself some coffee, or I'm gonna just like giving that permission to like find the space in your day where you can be lazy. But my other advice would be to find your accountability buddy. I have a really good friend from grad school, and we connect every 2 weeks. We talk via Zoom about like what our goals are, and we make small goals and we make bigger goals, and we just kind of talk about, and like, how'd you do? And like some weeks we're like, man, these past 2 weeks were really hard. I did not get a lot done. And we give each other space to be like, we have the next 2 weeks ahead of us. So, like get back on that horse. But that like, it's okay if we didn't reach our goals, but also like knowing that I'm going to talk to her and that's coming up. It's like, okay, well, you know what? I have this thing that's on the list that I said that I was going to do over the next 2 weeks. I could probably get that done before I talk to her again, so that I have one more thing, because we have our little list and like, did you do this? Great, good for you. Did you do this? Well, I got that maybe like 11/13 of the way done. Oh, that's pretty good, And so just being able to like have somebody to kind of support you, I think that's been, at least for me, hugely helpful in getting through this time.
I love that. Someone else in the chat said celebrating your small successes. And what you've done is you've created a situation where you get to celebrate those small successes with your accountability, which I think is a really cool thing that you've set up. And I think right now we can't discount the value of social contact. So just having that to look forward to, I think, is a real cool motivator too. So I love that, Andy. Thank you.
Julie, Dawn, can I jump in here? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So I don't know Andy, but Andy got me thinking about time. And for me, I have a to-do list, so don't call me a hypocrite. But I think our to-do lists mock us, that we look at that big long list of things we have to do, and they just make fun of us because we never get them all done. And and yeah, you put like it's Toad, Frog and Toad. Make to-do list. Maybe you can get some of those things off, but it never gets done. But I think my schedule is my friend, and so just making time to do those things and so like I'll block off time. Grading is not my favorite thing to do, but it's important. It's sometimes hard, and that helps me a lot. So the schedule, not just the to-do list, the schedule. The other thing, I learned this a while back, is priorities. And everybody, including the dean, is going to tell you, well, you need to prioritize, right? But the thing I learned about priorities is the more honest you can be with yourself about what your priorities are, the less stressed out you're going to be. And so, as Andy kind of indicated, like if your priority is to actually relax, and relaxed people are often kinder than stressed out people, make that a priority. And so build in some time for you to hang out with people you love, or to do something that you love. And for a lot of us, work is going to be a priority, right? But put it into the schedule and make sure your other priorities are there as well. And don't fool yourself. Like if you ask people, what are your priorities? They'll reel off all these highfalutin, important, ambitious, achiever kind of things. Well, if those aren't actually your priorities, the fact that you try to do it and never get it done is just going to stress you out.
Thank you, Greg. I think some of us, we have a little bit of a dilemma in that our personal priorities, even our professional priorities, don't always align with what those priority lists that other people give us. And I think it's coming to terms with that, I think, is going to be valuable for a lot of us.
Well, and that's what I think Julie's wisdom about trusting your gut.
Yeah. What other advice do we have about kind of all of the resilience, right? I mean, this is a workshop on resilience, and we're facing tons of challenges. I mean, one of the things I know several of us are facing, because I know you personally, is we got kids running around right now. I mean, my daughter very nicely brought me a little bowl of yogurt while we were having this kind of thing, and she waved to Julie because she knows Julie. How are we resilient with all of the challenges? Because like when Greg said, the schedule is our friend, my schedule is not my friend, because I have much less control over my schedule than I think I should. And even if I have that schedule laid out, there might be a kid who needs help getting on a Zoom meeting for, their classroom meeting in the morning, or that thing might run late and now my whole schedule is off. How are we surviving with those kinds of challenges?
Frozen pizzas.
Frozen pizzas. Yeah, meal planning is very important. I find a lot of investment in meal planning.
When I made the slide, Let It Go, that was driven by homeschool. And there is only so much you can do before you just have to go, right? And I'll also say I'm very open and honest with my students too. I don't complain, but it's part of it. It's just a reality. So just tell the truth.
I think remembering to play is really important. I have to consciously tell myself, go play with your kids. Go, now more than ever, we're really intentional about reading to our kids every night, finding a good book that's interesting and just taking, even if it's only a few pages, making sure to take that time to have connection that's not about, did you do your Zoom homework? Did you get this done? With doing the homeschooling, the remote schooling, I feel like our lives are starting to get dictated by what they have to do for school. And it's easy to forget that we're a family. And so intentionally taking that time and saying hey, let's go out for a walk. Let's read a book for a little bit, making sure to have that time and remember that we're people and have that social interaction that gives us, you know, those endorphins that, right, we love each other.
I love that, and that's something I try to remember. I think one of the issues that I have is that I'm a big fan of inertia. So, you know, the object in motion stays in motion, the object at rest stays at rest. So I don't rest very much. And I think sometimes I need to do that. And there's actually a strategy that they use to get people like me to relax, is they call resting cognitive renewal. And what that means is that even when you're resting, you're doing it with a productivity goal. And kind of when you come back from your rest, you're more productive and able to do more. And I've always thought that was kind of clever, yet it also works to fool high achievers into resting, is to tell them you need to rest to produce. So I love that. What other tips or tricks or recommendations do people have about this? Because this semester is like no other. I mean, it is amazing. We were talking about at the beginning of this, we can't believe it's already week 9. And at the same time, we can't believe it's already week 9 and we've got all this way to go and we have so much to do. What are we doing? What else are we doing? Because I'm trying to collect as many answers as I can. And Noah, you just had a cattail pop up there and it just freaked me out. So people are saying doing schoolwork weeks in advance. I like that to the extent as possible. For the high achieving perfectionists like myself, like needing to rest, we're learning that perfection is impossible. I think one of the things that I try to tell my grad students this, is that we got to know when good enough is good enough. Unfortunately, I don't think we're always good at knowing when good enough is good enough. You know, sometimes we overshoot, sometimes we undershoot. So I think we're making progress on being perfect, as Melissa added to her statement. But yeah, perfectionism is the goal of completion, which is a problem sometimes. So what other questions do you all want answered? I've kind of managed this discussion for a little bit, and I've heard what I want to hear, but what else do y'all want to hear? All right, so question about priorities. One of my students, first year student, has been fairly direct, sharing that school is not his top priority, though he knows it's important to his mom. I try to reach out to students, encourage them to do their best, but when a student just doesn't see school as a high priority, I'm not sure where to draw the line and where my responsibility is and where my student's responsibility is. And what are our thoughts on this? So this came through the chat, and I'm curious about what the group thinks.
I actually faced a similar, it's almost exactly the same thing with a first year freshman seminar student. And we have, the rule is 7 absences and you're done. And he was at 6. And just, I mean, I kept saying, email me, he kept having excuses, but wouldn't tell me what they were. He and I finally had a Zoom meeting and he said sort of the same thing. He's like, I just can't get awake. School isn't very important to me. I would rather not finish the work than to not do it fully and completely. Like he's beyond school as a freshman. And I gave him the space to talk and just let him talk and talk and talk. And I said, well, let's just state the facts. If you miss one more, then you're going to get an F. And he just looked at me. I said, I don't know what else to do. I said, so this is up to you. I want you to succeed. I will help you as best I can. But at the end of the day, this is a class that there are 6 of us teaching and we are bound to certain rules. And you know what? He's been in class ever since. I don't know. I mean, I was brutally honest and I really didn't know what way it was going to go. And I don't know if you've had that real conversation with the students, and that conversation could have gone horribly wrong. And I realized that and was very afraid, but there's still a lot of semester left. So I don't know how it's going to turn out. So just my thought.
And others in the chat are kind of doubling down and saying they're also having a hard time with some students who don't want to do the things this week and aren't trying. Are there any other advice that we have about helping those students along? And kind of back to some of the first question, where is our line? Like where are we professors versus, life coaches, kind of thing? Where does that line kind of show up?
I just want to say, like October is always really hard for any faculty who've been teaching for a long time. Like this is the week where the students just quit. My husband and I talk about it all the time. And so this talk came at a really great time because I usually teach during this time. And so they had a choice to come to this event, or we had a dance guest artist. And so, finding other opportunities, maybe just one class, like give the students a break, not really a break, but they're just learning something different. That's what fall break was for. If anyone remembers fall break, the long weekend, you had Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and that slowly went away, but that was necessary for people to refresh. And so that's what I've done for my classes. Just, try something different, just sort of this mid-October.
So I'm gonna switch the question to something else because we are getting a little bit short on time. I do want to, if anyone is reading the chat, there's definitely some wonderful discussion going on there. But Julie, I'm in particular interested in your thoughts. Someone has asked, well, what happens when we fail at the hard thing?
Well, you're going to fail. I've messed up all kinds of things. Haven't we all? I mean,
I think we have, but it's what do we do to try again? Like what do we do to gear ourselves up for the next potential failure? Because I've seen a lot of talks from top people in my discipline, and asking what's the one characteristic that you need to succeed, and they'll all say resilience, right? Because academics, I mean, there's so much failure. I mean, for those of you who didn't see Spotlight this past year, all those talks were on failure. And like one of the things I mentioned is the first time I applied for tenure track jobs, I got 40 rejections, but only applied for 39 jobs. I actually got more rejections than things that I had tried. And it's just, how is it that we get ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and try again when there's so much rejection? We're submitting grants and journal articles and all of these kinds of things.
For me, my experience has been, if it was really meant to be, if it was supposed to be done, if I was supposed to pursue that, it will happen. Maybe that's the Rhino in me. With Tap 2 Togetherness, we applied for a grant and I got a nasty rejection. Called my community partner. I said, that's it, we're done. Next morning, I said, hey, I've decided we're going to just do that without them. I just really don't care what they think. I mean, I know it doesn't always happen like that, but I believe that, I've decided what's most important to me. So as long as things that are most important, even if I fail, I'll figure it out. But I also like to just live in it for a while. So I go through all stages of, like, I'll get angry, I'll get sad, I'll cry, I'll, get angry and mad again. And then for me, I have to live through it all. And then I always arrive at the right place.
I love that. And I love that you're able to model that in your presentation today. There's a number of people in the chat who are reminding us that FAIL is actually an acronym for first attempt in learning. And that failure is just part of that process. Before we thank Julie, I just want to remind everybody, next week we have our second teaching chat of the semester, which means kind of a wild card day. You bring all your tips, tricks, issues, questions, concerns, and we'll talk them through. And the last teaching chat was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to that next week. But now what I want to do is I want to thank our speaker for today and for Julie for sharing her thoughts on resilience and rhinos and all of those kind of things. Thank you for being an inspiration to get us through the rest. So thank you, Julie.
Thank you.